your your role as like dad is very different than the other dad roles that I've interviewed already. I've talked to a bunch of different people, from newborns to grown kids going off to college to, just a whole slew of children under the age of like 5 or 6, like 4 kids under the age of 6. Ugh. Wild. But you're the first dad that I've spoken to that is divorced and has the kids Monday through Friday. So you have the majority of that
Correct.
time. How did that end up being the case, by the way? Because usually it's the opposite, right?
Yeah. Actually, it's really quite. Let's see. When we split, when my ex-wife and I split, it wasn't pleasant. There was never any like abuse. There was never anything like super negative. And we share legal custody. You know, there's never any like major issues there. And I try not to speak negatively about her, about the kid's mom. It's just there was different focuses. I ended up with a really good career that afforded me a lot of time. And so, in a way, like logistically, it just made sense for me to have the kids because it was easier for me to do my job. I work at night. I work until like 9 o'clock, but I work from 5 to 9. I own the building. No one can complain that my kids are there. And it just worked out logistics wise. The kid's mom also has particular career aspirations, and an idea of how she wants our children to live. And her only way to do that is to dive into her career. At least that's the going like explanation of it. Now, the weird thing is the system is not rigged for me. It
doesn't seem like it would be.
It was hard. Because the kid's mom kind of wanted all that free time and kind of wanted a way to dive into her career much deeper. I don't look at that as a bad thing because I think she's looking towards the future. There are negative sides of it. She's missing a lot of her kid's early career, early life. And I'm a terrible mom. Fantastic father. Come on. But even the best father is still like meh as far as a mother's concerned.
Sure.
Like I'm looking at my daughter's head and I'm like, I don't even know what shampoo to use. You know, like what she's 7, she's coming up on 7 right now. Like if I don't do these first like 7-8 years correctly, I'm looking at a monster for 14. Like I don't know what I'm going to get when this kid goes into things that I had. Like the boy, okay, I can deal with the boy, you know. It's like, you know, just don't take your penis out in public. Like put that away. Like, you know, just like whatever. That's it. Like as long as
rule number 1.
Yeah, like rule number 1, that stays in your pants and don't talk. Like I think the first day I dropped him off at school, I took him to preschool. I looked down at him and I just said, just don't swear. And he looked at me and I was like, all right, fine. And then the mom standing next to me was just like, that's, it's just that, like people start laughing at that. Like, look, just don't swear and don't steal from people. And, yeah, good luck, dude. You know, just like sent him in there and he did wonderful. But you know, it just ended up that way. It's good for the kids. I guess like, it's not ideal. I would have liked to have had more 50-50 because it changes a lot in the way that I have to handle and deal with myself. So you end up with a lot of pressure. It puts an immense amount of pressure on relationships. I've been through, like right out of the marriage, I got into a really bad one. That was miserable, and that left a whole bunch of scars that I'm dealing with. And then, you know, you look at trying to date at like 40 with 2 kids almost full time. And it's a strange situation to be in, for sure. And plus, like, you have to take into account, like, how is this going to affect the kids? Seeing me with somebody else. And like, there's a whole lot going on that I never thought that I would have to deal with.
How do you, and maybe you don't, but how do you find a way of sort of like watering the plant of your own life? Like, how do you like keep Robert an actual individual human being when you have 2 kids 70% of the time and the academy and, you know, like all these different things that are pulling you in different directions?
A lot of scotch. No,
I find myself at the bottom of a bottle.
I find myself at the bottom of a bottle. No, you know what? I don't hide any of it. I think that's just kind of how I am. My kids see me when I'm sad. They see me when I'm happy. And I thought a lot about how much of my kids should I expose to my personality? And the answer is all of it. Because we going back a little bit, like you talked about how, or we had spoken a little bit about how, like, you want to have your lineage behind you and to see who this kid is in front of you. I kind of see parenting in a way today as pruning away, not the negative experiences, but the negative lessons that I had as a kid. So, you always want to make your kid a little bit better than you. You want to teach them the things that nobody taught you. Like, oh, I wish I had known this as a kid. You want to be the dad that you wanted. My father was fantastic, by the way, and I still have wonderful contact with him, and like, but at the same time, there's also lessons that I never learned from him. Maybe he didn't know how to convey it. He was a much younger father than I was. But I do look back and I'm like, oh, you were figuring shit out at the same time. And now I go back and I talk to him. I'm like, Dad, what were you thinking during this part of your life? Because I had I don't want to get off on a tangent too much, but I had a sister that she died at, I think, 6 months. So it was a combination of like pneumonia and SIDS. And I was so young that I never really processed that all that well. I remember my dad just took me to the park and said, like, hey, your sister's gone. It was a much different conversation than that. It was handled much better. But like, that's kind of it. And, I was 10, 11. So now going back after having 2 kids that have grown and like gone through, the first couple of years of their life, I can sit down with my dad and go, hey, what was it like losing a child?
Yeah. And
that is like a really interesting topic. And he can tell me, okay, well, this is what your mother and I went through. This is how we handled it. And so you look at your kids and be like, okay, well, this is a lesson for loss, and I can teach you how to handle loss now. But he never told me that when I was 11. He couldn't have. So as you look at your kids and you want to raise them up and you want to give them lessons, you want to teach them, like I said, like the lessons that you maybe weren't taught at that same age. And it's touchy.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're not ready for it. Like my dad never talked about their divorce. Now I have 2 kids, coming up on 7, that, like, my son, he never remembers a time when I was with his mom. So in, 6, 8 years, there's going to be some questions. And so as his mom and I broke and divorced, and she moved out, or when I moved out and then she moved out, like, we made boxes, or I made boxes, and I think she did too. Where at one point, I can sit down with my kids, when they're teenagers, and say, listen, Mom and Dad had a failed relationship. Check out this box. And I can go through like years of pictures and years of letters and like years of things where I can be like, oh man, where'd that come from? A little bit of emotion. But and you can go through and like say, look, hey, Mom and I actually had a good life for, these years. The touchy part there is to make sure that the kids know, like, you have to edit that. Sorry about that.
No.
You're going to, but the kid's like, hey, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, don't apologize. One of the things that I'm
so I guess I had a lot of scotch, bury some shit.
No, that's good. I think it's important. Part of this like podcast has been for me accepting that dads aren't Terminator. Like, they're not emotionless robots.
That is a change, I think, because if I look back at my father, who was a Marine, and he like never, there was never like a, what did he say? He told me as a kid. He told me a lot of bad shit. But anyway, he told me like, hey, guilt is something that you should just be able to sit down and fix and then move forward. But my personality, I'm looking back and I'm like, no, Dad, like, no, that's how you bury stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that was handed on to him. So I go back to these lessons of like how you should handle yourself. And then the negative lessons you shouldn't hand on to your kids. So you should tell them today to process emotion correctly. And you should tell them to talk about things, because he never got to talk. Like if he sat down with his dad and was like, oh, Dad, I feel sad. He'd be like, we all do. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, move on.
We
like,
all do.
Yeah, he's like, we all do. That's why we invented beer. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Go outside, smoke your cigarettes, and then, handle business. And then you die a bitter death at 50.
Yeah, because you've just buried it. You've buried it the entire time. I think Bill Burr has a bit about that where he's like, you have a heart attack at 50, like your granddad had a heart attack at 50 because he was never allowed to say, God, that puppy's so cute.
That's not wrong. My grandfather did. My grandfather died on my 7th birthday.
Wow.
I just got done opening presents and my mom answers the phone and be like, oh shit, and so
Wow.
have that stigma on top of your birthday. No, it's fine. You look at men and that's just how it was. You died of heart disease in your 60s. You had 15 kids. You worked on a farm. Like, that's where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And so you prune back those lessons, and you look back at your kids and say, okay, I'm not going to give them the negative things. Show them, but I don't want you to grow up with this stigma. And then ideally, they take that and they're smart enough to pass that on to their kids, and this is how you become better people. Ideally. And I go back to like that foundation, that all the honor, integrity, and all the things that martial arts stacks up on. And my goal has been with the kids to make a real strong foundation so that whatever they stack on top of it in the future, it's not going to crumble. It's not going to come falling down.